Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening po sa lahat. Saan man po kayong panig ng daigdig naroon, welcome to our 145th episode of Stop COVID Deaths webinar series brought to you by the University of the Philippines. Thank you for being part of our credible online community, and to all those who just discovered us for today, welcome po at sana po marami po kayong matutunan in our very special topic for today's webinar. So while the COVID-19 pandemic na-deklara na po siya ng WHO as hindi na po siya pandemic, yung pong mga challenges both at the behavioral and emotional levels, they may be here to stay with us for some time. Yung mga childhood and adolescence, those are periods of great emotional vulnerability even under normal circumstances. So when COVID-19 hit, yung disruption po has been considered as intense and acute at the level of the household and had some negative impacts on family life. The impact of lockdowns, sickness, and even death in the family and in your inner circle could lead to post-traumatic stress and create long-drawn conditions of stress and anxiety that may impact the youth and children. In addition, yung pong mga magulang po natin, they have had to juggle their time between work, helping their children do their schoolwork at home, tuturuan po sila, and this has proved to be particularly challenging for families without the space or means to learn online. Kakibat po nito, parents are expected to be a stabilizing force in the family despite the hardships and stressors in their environment. And they continue to have those challenges, encounter those challenges in supporting their children's mental well-being, as well as being particularly at risk for experiencing mental health difficulties themselves. So for today's webinar, pag-uusapan po natin ang positive parenting tips for today. I'm Dr. Raymond Francis Sarmiento, Director National Telehealth Center, National Institutes of Health, University of the Philippines, Manila. Always a pleasure to be with all of you during our regular Friday. And always looking forward to Fridays because I get to share hosting duties with our adjunct research faculty at the National Telehealth Center and international public health communications expert, Dr. Susie Pineda Mercado. Dr. Susie?
Hi, Raymond. Good afternoon sa inyong lahat. And welcome to the webinar. Raymond,
Where are you now,
hear me?
Dr. Susie? Where are you now?
I'm in London to visit the Queen.
That's nice.
No, I'm attending the editorial board meeting of the British Medical Journal. So, maagang-maaga ngayon dito, 4:00 ng umaga, pero syempre nandito ako, I don't wanna miss this. Binabati ko po lahat ng mga nakikinig, all of those who are with us on the live broadcast of Zoom. And of course, all those who are watching on live streaming, no? TV UP YouTube channel,
Yep.
UP System Facebook, TV UP Facebook, Stop COVID Deaths Facebook page, ang dami natin, Raymond, ano? Plus all the TV UP Signal, TV channel 101. So I'd like to greet everyone. Nice to have you here. We've got a really interesting topic, and again, the very best speakers we can bring you. In today's episode, we're gonna take a closer look at parenting. Baka sabi ng iba, ba't naman tayo kasama dyan sa parenting? Aba, mga health workers, may mga anak din kayo. Kayo din ay nag-aalaga ng mga anak ninyo. At ng mga magulang. Sometimes you're the parent of your parent. So anyway, we have our main speaker. Naku, you know, Raymond, natutuwa talaga ako sa speakers natin kasi it's not easy to get them, and they really bring so much wisdom and experience to our webinar. So our main speaker, very well known, Dr. Stella Guerrero Manalo, who is the head of the Division of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics at PGH. Our reactor is none other than the chair of the PGH Department of Pediatrics, Dr. Marisa Lucban. And our synthesis and closing, none other than Stella Marie Jose, who is the head of the PGH Office of Expanded Education and Training. Sobrang big time lahat yung speakers natin. So, ang tabayanan nyo po dahil marami po tayong matututunan sa kanila. And as you know, we have our opening billboard where we talked about, we say it's Stop COVID Deaths, but we have said COVID means not just COVID, but other outbreaks, viruses, infections, disasters, at kung ano-ano pa. And we know that you always want to be abreast of the latest news in health and medicine here and abroad. And it's for this reason that we bring you the news update.
Okay, for our very first news update po for today, no, pag-usapan po natin ano po ba yung mga nangyari patungkol sa progress in tackling maternal and newborn deaths. Ayon po sa United Nations po, no, since 2015, it has stalled COVID-19, rising poverty, and worsening humanitarian crisis. Yung karamihan po nun, they intensify the pressure on already overstretched maternity and newborn health services. Ang report pong ito from the United Nations shows that over 4.5 million women and babies die every year during pregnancy, childbirth, or the first few weeks after birth. That's equivalent to one death happening every 7 seconds, mostly from preventable or treatable causes, if proper care was made available. Pregnant women and newborns continue to die at unacceptable high rates worldwide, and the COVID-19 pandemic has created further setbacks to providing them with the health care that they need. So there really is a need to improve maternal and newborn health and survival and reducing stillbirths. Ayon din po ito sa mga datos na meron po tayo. Since 2015, it has stagnated with around 290,000 maternal deaths each year, 1.9 million stillbirths, babies who die after 28 weeks po iyon, and a staggering 2.3 million newborn deaths, which are deaths in the first month of life. Over to you, Dr. Susie.
Oh, Raymond, on our news now from the Philippine News Agency, we have, well, there's news that the global pandemic is over, but that doesn't mean that COVID-19 is no longer a problem, no? So in a televised briefing, Edsel Salvania of the University of the Philippines clarified that the World Health Organization's lifting of the global emergency status for COVID-19 does not mean that the coronavirus has ceased to exist. I think there may be some misunderstanding there that, just because it's no longer a global emergency, that it's no longer there. It's still there, but I think the numbers have gone down. Usually we say we have a global emergency when you have 3 continents where you have very active transmission. But I guess now the cases have been going down, but it does not mean that there is no more COVID. So I think the emergency status has been removed. We have better management and control of the situation. But COVID is very much here to stay and is actually pandemic in many parts of the world. And so that's our news for today. We'll be back next week with more news on the news update. Okay, so we're back, Raymond, and I'm actually very excited to learn more about what parents can do, no? We're hearing so much news about children, young people who are really having so much fear, anxiety, stress. According to some of our psychiatry friends, maraming, trying to hurt themselves or even attempt suicide because of all of the stress that's been, what should I say, accumulated over the past few years. So we are going to talk about that. But I think, Raymond, you're going to introduce the persons on the street.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Susie. Yes, and especially for those who are joining us for the very first time, we usually set our discussion into context po, no? By having them, essentially ask the questions to our audience, common folks on the street, these questions, and we really cannot thank the TVUP team enough for week in and week out po na paggawa and pag-produce po ng mga videos na ito. We try to ask parents, we try to ask yung mga bata accompanied by their parents, and you will see this in the video. May mga magulang po kasama po ang kanilang mga anak. Ang mga tanong po namin, ano ang mga hamon ng mga magulang sa pagpapalaki ng mga anak sa panahon ngayon? Sa palagay po ba ninyo ay may mga bagong kakayahang kailangan ang mga magulang para mapalaki nila ng wasto ang kanilang mga anak? at anong mga bagay, para sa mga anak po, anong mga bagay ang ginagawa ng inyong mga magulang na sa tingin po ninyo ay nakakatulong kapag kayo ay nag-aalangan o naguguluhan. So all of these questions we pose to our interviewees. Please watch this.
One of the challenges that parents encounter today in raising their children, just like us, is instilling the Filipino culture. We know that children they have easy access to information, and most of the things that they watch over the internet are all about the Western culture. So,
as a young parent po, nag-struggle ako sa pagpapalaki ng anak ko, especially to self-healthy limits around screen time, which is yung paggamit niya ng gadgets ng matagal. Nag-start siya gumamit ngayong nagkaroon ng pandemic until now.
Having our children to engage more in physical activities with the gadgets and gizmos easily available in the market today.
Children need to understand that there are consequences to their actions and positive reinforcement for good behavior. While parenting styles may differ, I believe that it is essential to have consistency in discipline and to communicate in a calm and respectful manner.
Mahirap pa siyang i-address since 4 years old pa lang siya, and kahit ano explain ko sa kanya ng mga disadvantages madalas ina-ignore niya lang. And for me, along with my husband, to limit his usage of gadgets, nagkakaroon kami ng time as a family. Lumalabas kami, pumupunta sa mga malls or parks.
today it's so hard to influence them and follow along with the Filipino cultures, like saying po and opo, how to set clear boundaries between elders and children, because most of the time they imitate what they see on YouTube or in other social media outlets.
The crucial role that parents play in upbringing children cannot be overstated. From infancy to adulthood, children rely on their parents for emotional support, basic needs, and life skills to ensure children grow into well-rounded individuals. Parents must prioritize safety, education, healthy living, and social development.
Children will be more enticed to spend more time with their gadgets than they should. So, us as parents, I think should be more creative in finding ways to engage our children to do more physical activities.
Raising a child is one of the most challenging and fulfilling responsibilities a person can have. Every day you get to know yourself better through your child needs and behavior. In my view, bringing up our child requires patience, consistency, and a lot of effort.
One of the things that we need to do is to explain it to them in a manner that they would really understand what are the benefits of doing more physical activities than staying or using their gadgets.
In conclusion, parenting is a demanding, yet rewarding responsibility that sets the foundation for the life of a child. Parents' role in nurturing, loving, guiding, and supporting their children is critical for their physical and emotional growth, as well as the creation of a healthy and happy family unit. A fulfilling upbringing brings out the best in a child, leading to better developmental outcomes in the future.
Curious of that, nawawala sa isip niya yung paggamit ng mga gadgets. And for me, wala namang bagong kakayahan to address kung paano sila palakihin. Basta for all the parents out there like me, strong patience, mas lalong pahabain, and i-discipline sila in a good way.
Okay, thank you so much, TVUP. So, it's always nice to be able to hear the perspectives po of our common folks on the street, and something to really open up our eyes with regards to, especially a lot of you might have noticed a labi po nating mga young parents po, no, na nandun po. So something that will also deal with it in terms of our discussion for today. So a little bit of housekeeping lang po for today. Those who are asking for their certificates of attendance, as always, only those who have watched at least 50% of the webinar duration will be able to receive a certificate of attendance, just like that what is shown on the screen. We have already sent out the certificates po, no? I think there are those a few people who have sent in their emails. We have tried to review those records of us, and we'll shortly go back to your emails to respond to those if you have not received your certificates. But for those na kailangan pong to reach out to us, please email us at stopcoviddeaths@up.edu.ph. For today's webinar, we'll be having our standard panel discussion format, having our speaker present first, then we'll hear from our reactor, and this will be followed by our Q&A in the open forum po. But before we delve into the webinar, I know everyone is very excited about our fun quiz. So here it is, our cute intro video for our fun quiz segment for today.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Kumusta na kayo lahat?
Hi, I'm Doc Trucy, the mini Doc Susie.
And I'm Doc Radar, the mini Doc Raymond. Are you ready to have fun? Simply open your browser to www.slido.com and enter your code to participate. We will discuss your answers during the panel discussion later on in the program.
We will have it flashing on your screen in a bit, and we look forward to your answers. Masaya at madali lang ito. Join na!
So we've kept the just of being in the festive mood since it really has been 3 years, and thank you so much for everyone's support and cooperation, and really for keeping our community alive. So may we have on the screen our 2 questions for today, which serves as a pre-test po, no? And hopefully towards the end, you'll be able to remember our correct answers po, no? That to be given by our speakers. So for the Slido, I'm not seeing it in the Slido, but those who are joining us outside of the Zoom, if you're in Facebook or in YouTube, you'll be able to join us in this fun quiz if you open up your internet browsers and type in slido.com. And when you are prompted, you enter the code 6510096. That's 6510096 for you to be able to participate in our fun quiz. We have 2 questions for today. The first question reads, what are the skills needed for positive parenting? Is it A, consistent limit setting? Is it B, being open with good listening skills? Is it C, implementing positive reinforcement? Is it D, avoidance of corporal punishment? Or letter E, all of the above? I'd like to take this opportunity to greet those who are joining us from Quezon City, specifically from the National Kidney and Transplant Institute, from the UP Philippine Foundation Incorporated in Manila, from Qualimed Hospital in Healthway Qualimed, Santa Rosa. Nagkaroon po sila ng kanilang brand unveiling recently. The Department of Education in Pasay City, and Sumajit Salamida Eye Clinic in Rojas in Isabela in Cagayan Valley. I'd like to greet those na nandito rin po in the chat. Bulacan Medical Center, Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine. Welcome po. Sana po marami po kayong matutunan for today. From those from Las Piñas, and those who are joining us from Bataan, from Morong Rizal, from UP PGH Ward 1 Medicine po iyon, from Rojas Isabela, from RPHS Annex 1 in Antipolo, from Manila Health Department. Maraming salamat. From Cavite, DepEd na GMA Cavite rin po. We have those international, which I will greet later on po. From Iloilo, from Deca Homes Loma de Gato in Marilao, Bulacan, UP Los Baños, and yung mga taga-Diliman din po. Thank you so much for joining us in today's webinar. From Batangas, maraming salamat po. Question number 2 reads, what are the most common situations that require positive parenting? Is it A, when a child has high grades in school? B, when a child is misbehaving? C, when a child is diagnosed with autism? D, during activities of daily living? Or E, lahat po na nabanggit, all of the above? So we'd like to greet those who are joining us internationally, those who are joining us, may pahabol po locally from Quezon Province, thank you so much. But internationally, those from the University of Al in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, from Algeria, mga nanonood po from Algeria, from Jakarta, Indonesia, maraming salamat din po. From Vinmec International Hospital in Phu Quoc City, Quien Giang Province in Vietnam, from Chuanin Hospital in Taipei City in Taiwan, Mentari Intercultural School Allied Medical Professional from Jakarta, Indonesia, from Island Hospital in Pulau Pinang, Malaysia, Lunichi Ali, University of Blida 2 in Blida, Algeria. Welcome po sa lahat. So thank you so much. We will not be closing po ito pong fun quiz. You'll be able to see this, especially Slido and dito po sa ating Zoom as we move on po to our webinar proper for today. So for our webinar proper, I'd like to take this opportunity. I think very rare that we'll get someone an expert of this caliber, but very excited to have the discussion underway. So let's get into it. Our main presenter for this webinar is the head of the PGH Department of Pediatrics Division of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics. So please give a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Stella Guerrero Manalo. Dr. Manalo.
Okay, thank you and good noon to everyone. Let's start na.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead po.
Okay, I'll share screen. Okay. Oh, ito. Magsa-slide share. Ayun, slideshow. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead po.
So, you had your own title. Tas ito yung title ko, Parenting, a Critical Part of Early Intervention. So, yan ang objective ko. I want to change the mindset of everyone that parenting is not just parenting. We kind of look down on parenting. Parenting lang yan. But after more than 25 years of practice as a developmental pediatrician, parenting is so important. Sabi ko, day in and day out, for every patient, ang ginagawa ko pala parenting. So parenting is, you look at it as a early intervention to prevent child abuse and neglect, developmental problems, and mental health issues. So it's so important and it's evidence-based. So ang gusto ko rin magawa is to demystify parenting and to empower parents. Gusto kong makita ninyong lahat, kaya ko ito, kaya ko itong gawin. And it's easier said than done. So mahirap talaga maging magulang sa panahon ngayon. Actually, mahirap maging magulang. Okay? I'll let you in on a secret. The reason why I went into developmental pediatrics is I also wanted to be a good parent. And nobody teaches us or trains us to be a good parent. Puro, di ba, it's mostly trial and error. And by the time you realize it, ang dami mo ng errors, hindi mo na maibalik yung nakaraan. But now, we see that parenting is both an art and a science. So, bakit sinabi ko mahirap lalo na ngayon? Parenting is constantly evolving because our environment is constantly evolving. When mga 20 years ago, wala naman itong mga gadgets eh. So ngayon, ang kalaban ng parents talaga sa epektibong pag-aaruga ay gadgets, online gaming, YouTube, and social media. That was not the environment we had 15 years ago or 20 years ago. So there's so much information overload then. So maraming information about parenting. However, it's not curated. Parang opinions, ano ba to, totoo ba to, fake news. So it's really confusing. If it's confusing to the parents, what more, all this information is also confusing to children. Okay, so let me share with you yung top 10 diagnoses in the pediatric outpatient department. So this is since 2011. We're seeing, noon kasi when I started in the 1990s, pag siya, ano ba yung developmental pediatrician? Ano yan, psychiatrist? Nobody really knew what a developmental pediatrician was. But recently, talagang there's a surge and a demand for developmental pediatrics. So if you look at it, what's the significance of 2011? You would know that 2009 and 2010, doon nagkaroon ng iPhone. Nag-surge din yung mga smartphones. So we see here that in the 2011 to 2015, talagang nasa top 10 parati ang developmental concerns. Global delay, autism, language disorders. And it's also the last, So ito recently, 2017 to 2022 naman, hindi lang top 10, top 5 na. So what happened in 2020? That's the pandemic. So child development is impacted heavily by the environment. And the most pervasive environment in the past 10, 15 years is the digital environment, the cyberspace. And then in the past 3 to 4 years, it's the pandemic lockdown. Okay. So we're seeing really so many children who need help. Ang dami talagang delays, and it's reflected in our outpatient census. And when you talk to everybody seems to know a child who has developmental delay. And even with my colleagues in developmental pediatrics, ang dami-dami talagang consults. Parang we're booked 6 months to 2 years in advance. So how do we help them? An assessment is important because early intervention, identification is important. Pero I want to stress that early intervention, it's family intervention first. And this is basically parent education, parenting. Yung mga sinasabing therapy, speech, occupational therapy, educational therapy are assists only. Now, I realize how important this mindset or framework is. Kasi I remember 15 years ago, an expat patient, I had to defend sa insurance company nila why this patient needed speech or occupational therapy. The patient was only 4 years old. Dinisallow kasi abroad, they only allow OT and speech therapy for children above 6 or 7. And now I realize, yung framework din pala nila abroad is, ang early intervention is not therapy, but it's parent education. Because abroad, kulang din yung therapist nila. So what is done abroad is really, it's parent coaching. Pupunta yung therapist or parent coach to the home to educate and help the parents of children with delays or special needs, to help them structure the home environment to make it more effective for the child's development and learning. Okay. So ito, I always tell the parents of my patient, and siguro naririndi na rin yung mga fellows ko, every patient I have to explain that human development is a process. Okay? And young kids, age 1 to 3, who present with delayed development or delayed speech just means one thing, that these children need help and support to develop. Hindi autopilot ang development. So if you're going to autopilot, this child will take a long time to develop. But I assure them that all these children will evolve and develop. Ang tanong, how fast or how slow will they develop? And it really depends on two things. The first thing is child factors. May genetic problem, biological, meron bang inherent sa child, which is a developmental problem like autism or a language disorder or a learning disorder that impacts on their learning. So that's one aspect. The other big aspect is the support that is given by the family or parents. So may mga critical periods of development. Hindi static ang development. The child is constantly evolving. So just to have a one-time diagnosis is not appropriate or effective. Kasi kailangan nakikita mo how the child is evolving. And you have to support parents at every stage of development. Okay, so yung first is the early years. The most important here is language communication. So how can you help the child be more effective and to be able to develop language? The next phase is the early years, from kindergarten to grade 3. And the most important development that happens here is social behavior. Sabi ko nga, preparation lahat yan. You cannot expect that when you put the child in school, automatically a child knows how to behave. So, sorry may basura, collecting basura. So the preparation may take months or many months to a year. So that's also diagnostic in itself. How will this child adapt to group learning? So after the early years, yung middle school, grade 4 to 6, you have to check if this child is really comprehending what they are learning in school. At saka kailangan may critical thinking din tong batang to. So how do you help the child here? Then that's, you need some specialized help to assess the needs of the child at this period. And then in adolescence, the most important development here is socio-emotional skills. Kasi yan ang foundation for mental health. So if a child, para autopilot parenting, na you thinking the child will develop on their own, tapos marami pala siyang lacking skills, wala palang communication, wala pang comprehension, walang critical thinking, wala siyang social behavior, pagdating ng adolescent, napaka-withdrawn nitong batang ito, maraming mental health problems. And it's so difficult na at this stage of their development, aayusin mo yung lahat na dapat naayos nung early years, nung primary years, or yung middle school years. Because we have one objective for all our children. It's really how, as adults, they are fully developed, gainfully employed, and basically independent and not requiring so much support. So this is the optimum state. Ang tanong ng marami, maaabot ba nila yan? Hindi ko rin masabi. Only time will tell. Kasi maaring with lack of support, mag-arrested development sila somewhere along the line. But with support from the early years, this is more achievable. So as I mentioned earlier, early intervention is key. Problema, ang tagal ng waiting lines for DevPedia assessment. And recently, in the past mga 5 years, actually before the pandemic occurred, wala rin makuhang slots for occupational or speech therapy. Okay? So ang kailangan, I think what we have to do is really to empower all general pediatricians, family meds, frontliners, anybody who deals with children and parents on the importance of parenting and parent education. Okay, so this is haba ng introduction. No? So we talk about parenting equals early intervention and positive parenting. So positive parenting is parang framework. Actually, I don't like to use positive parenting kasi siya trademark yan yung positive parenting program. So yung principles lang is the aim of discipline is to teach. Okay, so I think this is a very important thing. Okay. Ang prinsipyo nito is that number one, you recognize the child as an individual with rights and thinking skills. So children are wired to learn. So yung sinasabi, no, stop, does not make sense to a child. So if I were a little kid and you say stop, you're wired to learn, you ask, and then what will I do? That doesn't make sense not to do something because you're still learning. So you want to know, then what should I do? So basically, positive parenting means sabihin mo sa bata kung ano gagawin. So it's framing also how you talk. Instead of saying, no, stop, tell them, let's do it this way. Tapos ipakita nyo. So basically, that's the basic principle. And discipline means you want them to learn something. Hindi yung discipline is to control. So if you think, gusto kong, pag sinabi ko no, isang tingin takot na siya, titigil. Mali yun. Kasi, anong tinuturo mo sa bata? Fear. Okay? So that's not the proper discipline. Kasi titigil ako momentarily, pero pag mamaya, inisip ko, di anong gagawin ko? Pinatigil nyo ako, I want to do something. Okay? So napaka-importante na there is a recognition that this is a thinking child. And this child wants to learn. And when you approach and tell the child what to do, you actually engage them. So positive parenting builds trust, communication, and respect in the parent-child relationship, hindi fear. Kasi nga, you, as a child, you think, I love this parent, he's teaching me so many things. Then you will look at the parent, kasi engage, parang eureka sa bata na, uy, may natutunan ako. Okay. So we also use rewards and reinforcement to teach, to let the child know that what they're doing is correct. And reinforcement means just a look, a smile, or good, a show that you're approving the child's behavior. But negative attention is also reinforcement. So kung yung bata nag-misbehave, tapos saka nyo lang papansinin yung misbehavior, so the child, in the child's mind, they're thinking, tama yung ginagawa ko kasi pinansin ako ng magulang ko. So you have to understand the child, magaling sila sa looking at action-reaction. If I do this, what happens? Because nga, if they're not talking, they're very astute in observing action-reaction. Kaya nga, kids who are language delayed actually love gadgets kasi ang gadgets and technology is so logical. Whenever I do this, this happens. If I do this, this happens. Kaya nga hindi nagsasalita yung infants, kaya na nila i-manipulate yung gadgets. Okay, so parents, you are your child's best teacher. So ito yung basic principles lang of parenting, no? Kasi we have to simplify it so that parents feel na kaya nila to. Create structure and routines at home. Be consistent. Stimulate language by talking to your child. And I say use whole words. Maraming parents nagsasabi, Doktora, tinuturuan ko yung anak ko, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, ABC. Sabi ko, mali naman yata yan. We don't communicate saying ABC. And also, ABC, learning your alphabet and how to read, is a task of an older child, a 5-year-old child, not of a 2-year-old or 3-year-old. Okay? So you maximize engagement by playing with your child. Kasi playing is a way a child learns. And playing with your child promotes communication and social interaction. And when you do this, you will be able to limit screen time. Okay, so next. So, okay, these are parang principles. So how do you concretize this? So I will share with you some simple tips, okay, which have been very effective. You start with using visual schedule. Ano ba yung visual schedule? Kasi nga, kung wala kang masyadong language or napaka-short ng attention span mo, you have the rules, the house rules are established by visuals. So ito, ang visual schedules support literacy development kasi pinoprogram mo yung brain nila words and picture. It teaches a child concept of sequencing, and it helps a child anticipate what is expected of them for that day. And it's also a help to parents kasi nga parents need reminders na parang, okay, what will I do na? Pagod na ako. Kung hindi mo na plano yung gagawin sa anak mo, ang default niyan, bibigyan mo ng gadget or bubuksan mo yung TV. So this schedule is not only for the child, it's also for the caregivers of the child. And of course, diba, it reduces anxiety. Why? For everyone, the unknown is anxiety-provoking. Now, as a child, if you know what's going to happen next, you are less anxious, you are more prepared to accept the changes that are going to happen within the day. So this is an example, gawa ko ito and I show my parents, ito ang ibig ko sabihin by making a visual schedule. Okay, so you show them, this is a picture of the child, this is wake up time. 8 o'clock, eating breakfast, you show them the picture and you tell the child, eat breakfast. So it enhances, they see the picture, alam ko, that's what eating means pala. Then playground time. So they know, oh, there's a time to play, a time to eat, and like in the afternoon, or a time to nap, a time to exercise, and then that's how you also control TV time or gadget use. Kasi may sequence that the child has to do this before they are able to watch TV. And this is how you moderate the use of gadgets. Okay. So napaka-importante na alam ng bata. Alam mo, it's so effective even in 2 to 2.5-year-olds when they see what is expected of them, they're able to organize their behavior. Okay. And another important principle talaga is that children need movement. Movement enhances brain organization and development. So I think ang impact din ng pandemic na yung mga bata hindi nakakalabas, they're cramped in a small room, you're preventing them from moving around and exploring the environment. So ang daming mga hyperactive and dysregulated kids because in the important years of age 1 to 3, they were not able to move. And minsan sasabihin, malikot yung bata. Then give them more movement because the brain is asking for movements for it to get organized. And if you deprive this child of this movement, they will continue to be hyperactive for a longer time. Also, ang batang nasa harap ng screen ay hindi gumagalaw. Pag nasa harap ng gadget, nakaupo lang. So dinideprive mo rin itong bata of movement that they really need. Okay, so yun, just that easy step, how a visual schedule will address language, structure, activities, moderate TV time, and give the child appropriate, developmentally appropriate activities. Okay. And we actually have let me advertise our toolkit on child development for the general pediatrician and other health caregivers, which we actually started in 2014. But that time, it was logistically difficult to continue this kasi, you know, you get people from all over, how will they come to one place? But now it's more feasible because we have learned that we can do many things online, especially this training. So this training really is to develop mga frontliners to understand the science and the art of child development and how to work with the developmental pediatrician. Okay, so these are some of the few topics. And we're doing a run in June. Okay, and also I'd like to share with you that meron evidence-based program, community-based MAPA, Masayang Pamilya para sa Batang Pilipino. Libre ito We just need volunteers. We train the community workers, social workers, how to teach parents to engage and play with their children. And through play and being more responsive to their child, they are also stimulating the language, and they're managing the behavior of these children. Okay, so I guess yun. And basically, when everything is when you're confused, you don't know where you're going, ito ang shinare ito ng mother ng aking pasyente. Her children are already adults. She struggled through raising them. And in the end, she realized, I said she did quite a good job. Kasi I saw her kid when they were young, but she managed them over elementary to high school and college. It was difficult for her. Nangangapa siya. But in the end, she realized malasakit and love is really the answer to being a good parent. Okay, so I think that's the last slide.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stella. Nako, ang galing! Wala pa tayong virtual, ano? I lost you guys for a while, but I picked up on Stella's presentation. That was phenomenal. I hope our audience will watch it again. Many of you are in dep ed. Maybe you should share this with your colleagues, sa mga simbahan nyo, sa mga groups nyo. Very clear, very concise, and I think very, very practical advice coming from Stella. Thank you so much, Stella. I'm blown away by that. I've heard you speak, but this one is okay. So thanks a lot. Raymond, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Manalo. Thank you, Dr. Susie. So we have two speakers po for today, no, and we'll have Dr. Manalo join us in our Q&A session, ma'am. Thank you po. For our next speaker, she'll be reacting to the presentation po, no. She's the chair of the Department of Pediatrics at PGH. Please welcome to your screens, Dr. Marisa Lucban. Dr. Lucban.
Hello po, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat, and thank you for having us in the Department of Pediatrics, TVUP. So it's really a very good program, what UP Manila is actually doing, highlighting the things that the different departments, no, of Philippine General Hospital is doing. And when Dr. Stella Jose actually ask us, ano kaya yung topic ng pediatrics? It's the very first thing that came to my mind actually is developmental pediatrics. If you notice yung pinakita ni Dr. Stella Manalo, yung aming census sa outpatient, it's actually very glaring, especially for the past 2 to 3 years, na bakit number 1, number 2, number 3 pa na developmental problem. Tapos sisingit ko na lang kasi child neurologist ako eh. Nasa gitna yung epilepsy. So there's a lot of, wait, sadali. Sorry. I forgot, hindi pala ako naka.
It's okay, ma'am. It's okay.
Okay. So, when you used to think about pediatricians, you think about, anong mga sakit ng mga bata, and we used to be very involved in illness and diseases. But nowadays, hindi lang yan ang role ng pediatrician. That's what I wanted to highlight with asking Dr. Estela to speak with us about parenting. That the pediatrician is not only involved with illnesses, but actually we want to be partners of parents, teach them how to be good parents. It's not only for people with developmental problems like autism, ADHD, hindi lang yun. Di ba, we advocate a lot of well-being techniques in our general practice, lalo na sa mga pediatricians who are not specialists like us. We talk about vaccination, we talk about safety at home. And one of the things that actually needs to be emphasized now is exactly what Dr. Estela mentioned, that people or children with probably developmental delays and even normal kids are growing up. Our greatest partner is the parent. So even us in pediatrics, we're actually teaching our residents and our trainees, especially now with universal healthcare, and the Department of Pediatrics is trying to lead a change in the curriculum of what we teach. We want to teach our pediatricians who are in pain to be present and to be available for universal health care. And ano bang concerns ng mga parents in universal health care? Paano nila arugaan yung mga pasyente nila? I can still remember the time when I was in residency in pediatrics. We don't talk about this. We don't talk about teaching parents what to do, di ba? Parang tinuturo lang namin anong sakit, sipot, reseta, mga ganyan. But things are actually changing, and I'm very glad that the Division of Developmental Pediatrics is the one leading us to this change of mindset. So Dr. Estela mentioned that there is a very, very long line before, di ba? Pag nagpa-refer ka sa developmental, 6 months to 1 year bago nyo makita ang specialist. And then, after nakita specialist, akala magkakaroon ng intervention, refer to OT, refer to speech, refer to PT. Pero now we're actually teaching the parent that, you know, for some concerns of developing children, you don't need that kind of specialist, or even if you wait, you can do something and intervene, and that's what Dr. Estela actually. So I'm very glad about that. Perhaps daw sinabi ni Dr. Estela, I was very glad when she showed to you the toolkit for general pediatrician and healthcare givers. So they're doing this project in their society para lahat ng pediatricians know how to be a parent, and lahat ng caregivers also will know how to be. We prepare ourselves, di ba sa career natin, we prepare ourselves several years, reading, studying. Ang pagiging parent is a lifelong work from the time the baby is born until they go to college, di ba? Nandun ang parent na dapat nakasubaybay. So it's very true that gone are the days na yung parang hit and miss. I think there are a lot of specialists right now, not only developmental pediatricians themselves, psychiatrists, child specialists, health specialists, who can take the role of teaching young parents, especially those who have no experience, how to be a good parent at the onset. So that's my reaction to Dr. Estela.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marisa Lucban, Chair po ng Department of Pediatrics of the Philippine General Hospital for your reaction. I'm so many questions in my head. I think really this is a very important topic, not only for the pediatricians but for the families out there. So maraming salamat po, and thank you for helping us put this webinar together. Okay, Raymond, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lucban, and thank you, Dr. Susie. So for now, since we have our panelists open up their videos po in preparation for our open forum, before we go into the questions, we'll just take a very quick break for our special public service announcement for today. Go ahead, TVUP. Baka ano pa, pinaprepare lang ang ating video. Yan.
to?
Kaloy, bilisan mo! Dali! Wala!
Ha? Ano nangyari? Ba't hindi kita makapitan?
Handa ka na ba, Kaloy?
Oo naman, ate. Nabakulahan na kami. May powers na kami laban sa inyo.
At hindi nyo na kami basta-bastang makakapitan. Yay!
Sisiw!
Kaya mga bata, magpapakuna na kayo.
Stay safe and stay well. Mga bata, magpasama na sa Bakuna Center. Thank you so much, TVUP. The COVID Communications Public Service Announcement is one of the many creative outputs of the Stop COVID Deaths team to push for vaccination for children age 5 and above. Please share this video clip with all of your social media accounts. Stay safe and stay well. Magpasama na po sa Bakuna Center. Okay, let's go ahead with the first question, Dr. Susie.
Yeah, we've got some questions in the Q&A box, but I wanted to start our discussion by asking both Stella and Marisa. No? Ako naman, mausan naman ako, Raymond. As far as I recall, every year, we have about 1.8 to 2 million babies that are born. That's the size of the number of newborn kids, 1.8 to 2. It might be a little less now, but nandun naglalaro, no? And when I think about what Stella said and the skills that are needed by parents to raise children properly in this day and age, no? Kasi alam nyo naman yan eh, pagpunta mo sa probinsya, may maliliit na bata, buntis pa, tumatakbo na yung isa sa labas and all of that, no? There's just the need for the parenting skills is really so high. So I'm wondering, and this is not to put you on the spot or to sort of really look for an answer, but what do you think would be some approaches or strategies so that we can multiply this information that you've given, Stella, right? I mean, I'm sure social workers, teachers, and others could be involved in this. It's not necessarily midwives, nurses, etc. What could be a strategy for us to scale it up so that more people get the information?
Well, with the use of social media, technology, but then dapat curated. Kasi effective din naman ng, di ba? Well, people don't read too much now. Karamihan,
Yeah, they don't, huh?
mas effective na they see it. Kaya mga bata, visual learners din eh. You just cannot tell them. You have to show them what you mean. You have to use pictures and visuals. So parang nag-evolve din yung learning style. So I think it's important that we have we have the content, but somebody has to make it simpler and shorter maybe, so that the basic concepts can be caught already by the general public. Kasi it's not rocket science eh. And I think you have to make it simple so that parents also feel doable yan.
Yeah, hindi mahirap. No? Hindi siya mahirap.
It shouldn't be too academic or sometimes there's too much theory. But it's really simple principles and give them examples. And actually, the important thing is also model yung parents. Kaya sabi ko, empower parents so that they will also learn to empower their children. Kasi,
correct.
Yeah, I saw a question here about saying, parang yung mga bata ngayon parang walang respect. Is respect really an outward show na yung using por, opo, or not answering back to your elders? Kasi sobrang repressed yung generation na yan. They could not talk back to their parents. If you apply that to nowadays, sobrang repressed yung mga bata. Yun ang mga depressed, yung mga nagsusuicide, na they're not able to express themselves. So kailangan yung mindset nga, it's okay even if they're disrespectful, at least they're alive and you hear what they're saying.
Lumalaban pa, oo.
Pero at least you know they're mentally healthy kasi na-express nila yung feelings nila kaysa yung everything's all right, opo, and so ano, and then mamaya patay na, nagpakamatay na. So sabi ko, it's yung principles maybe nung araw nag-evolve din, hindi mo ma-apply ngayon.
Yeah, it's different. No, Marisa, what do you think?
Yeah, can I add also? Can I tell you that there's a program called Reach Out and Read? Reach Out and Read is actually naman the program by the ambulatory pediatrics. Sila naman yung nag-lead. That in every, at least in Philippine General Hospital, meron kaming program that we supply a lot of books. And thank you, Susie, dun sa books ng iyong apo. Kasi we're using that, no? Now, we always tell the parent who comes in our outpatient department that the importance of teaching them to read. Basta lang magkaroon ng isang libro, lalo na first, even the 0 to 1, di ba? Pakita mo lang yung pictures. I always also tell that to even patients who have neurologic problems, akala mo hindi nila nakakapagod. I can actually share an experience kasi naging lola na ako, no? I've been a lola during the pandemic, and I took care of my grandson. And I can see from the, now that I'm older, no? Now that I'm at this age, and iba na yung pinapalaki ko, I can see how the development of language actually improved. Just reading books to them. So at least that's one step. It's so easy to do. Every parent can do it at their spare time. Nakita ko yung list ni Stella na merong oras na gano'n. Sabi ko, medyo mahirap din ata po minsan yan pag ang parent ay nagtatrabaho. Pero there's this certain period at night, bago sila matulog, basahan lang. So that's one step. You're asking for other programs. I think there are, I can tell you because I'm in administration right now, that aside from the reach out and read, merong yung sinabi nga ni Dr. Estela na meron sa program. Somebody has to really put that out out there. Before we had this seminar, I Googled lang very quickly good parent tips. Ang dami pala. So now that everybody has an iPhone, we can always tell them, Mommy, punta ka lang sa website na to. Makikita mo how you can be a good parent. And so that's a good source. So we can use social media in a good way so that they can become.
Well, I kind of like the idea of the poster kasi, in the same way na pag umuwi yung parent, may yellow card, di ba? Merong ganon. What if meron din silang ganyan na parang poster, no? I don't know. It's just making me think a little bit more how we can be creative. Pero, Raymond, andyan ka ba?
Yes, Dr. Susie, yes. Sorry.
Raymond, parang ano yata to, this is a job for Super Raymond eh. Parang I think, should we be thinking of some kind of a regular, I don't know, some kind of a regular program on parenting through the telehealth platform where these things are taken up in bits. Anyway, we have TVUP, we have Channel 101, no? Somehow makakatulong yun na maganda kasi yung mga points ni Stella, very practical eh. Hindi,
That's true.
di ba parang hindi siya mahirap isipin tapos nandyan na yung books nila. And then how can they get the books? Or how can they get it online? I mean, baka konting tulak na lang. So as Stella's saying, the content is there. But the push, to sort of get it out there in the public, yun siguro yung baka somehow makatulong tayo. Anyway, pagdasal natin kung paano mangyayari yan.
We'll strategize. Definitely. Kasi I think a lot, I'm seeing also a lot in the chat that there's high interest on this one, and you will see that they're willing to share it within their networks, etc. Something that we should be facilitating in that.
Yes, facilitate natin, di ba? Kasi sabi ko parang it's a simple talk but malaman siya, tapos meron naman silang toolkit, no? So, I'm even thinking DSWD, local governments, DepEd, no? Kasi this is the new, sabi ko nga, just reflecting on what Stella was saying, we keep on talking about the new normal, all right? What's the new normal? This is the new normal. Kids have been repressed. They cannot go out. The parents don't know what to do with them. And yet we have some very specific answers here that can be used immediately, right? It doesn't need a lot of training. It just needs some, what should I say, a nudge, a little bit of a nudge. Anyway, sige, go ahead, Raymond. Let's take some of the questions from the audience. I saw a couple.
I want to add
Yes, ma'am. Go
Sige,
ahead, Dr.
Stel, go ahead. Oh.
Kasi sometimes yung messaging, maganda yung reading books. But ang akala ng ibang parents, yung bata kailangan turuan mo na mag-read. So I always tell them, the book is a script of a parent. Hindi mo naiisipin yung ikukwento mo sa bata kasi may libro na doon. Kasi they think, read ABC, tuturuan na mag-read. Hindi, kwentuhan ang importante. You have to talk. Tell stories to your child. Whole words, hindi ABC, hindi academics.
Hindi kasi alam mo, Stel, reinforced yan by our school system na parang ang importante matutong magsulat ng ABC. Pero actually, what you're capturing there are the emotions, di ba? Naming things. I think you're right. Parents are losing the purpose of reading. Di ba? Parang tama ka, hindi yan para matutong mag-ABC. Anong gagawin mo sa ABC, di ba? Di ba?
ABC, WXYZ, you don't talk to your child like that. With letters, you don't. Whole word. And then, yung masyadong focused ang parents, they think everything's all right if my child has good grades. In fact, those good grades, grabe ang mental health problems ng mga yan. Kasi they define themselves based on their grades. So anong buong generation of who feel inadequate because their grades are not up to par. So that's the work of human development, to make a person feel inadequate and incompetent. Our educational system may have that impact on our children.
Hindi, tsaka Stel, di ba, tinanggal na nila ngayon yung wala na yung mga puro reading, writing, arithmetic yan Wala na silang gardening, wala na silang physical education. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, you're right. It really puts people down. Instead of developing, people developing to their full potential, they feel they have low self-esteem. Because not everyone can be valedictorian.
What is this teaching us? Ranking? It's teaching competition instead of collaboration, which is the skill that is needed in this day and age.
Yeah, correct. Tama. Raymond, punta ka sa question mo.
Okay. Ay pipiliin ko na po yung yung tinatype na ni Dr. Lucban. What's your opinion po, or at least your recommendation so para po if both parents daw are working, paano daw po if both are abroad, paano naman daw po if single parent, how are the challenges, how can the challenges be managed in those types of setups po? We'll start with Dr. Lucban and then Dr. Manalo po.
Okay. Ang maganda sa Filipino culture is we have extended families, di ba? So, miski na nga naiiwan child to a grandparent, auntie and uncle. So, sila din ang kailangan matuto ng good parenting. It's not just the mother and the father. But of course, hindi pwedeng mawala yung presence ng parents even if they're not physically there. And it's fortunate we have video chatting which is allowed, no? Mention nga ni no gadgets except for video chatting and the visual presence of the parents online is an important factor pa rin in making sure that the children know that their parents are present.
Well, yeah, that's yung reality nga nowadays. Yung parents are both busy. That was really yung talagang challenge din during the pandemic lockdown, na online yung parents working from home, and even if they're physically present, they couldn't be there for their children. So ang talaga dyan, time management, extended family, but those with special needs talaga. And I really say somebody has to sacrifice muna. One parent may really need to, sabi ko, yung career pwede mong balikan eh. Pero yung first 2 or 3 years of your child's life na napaka-importante ng support for their development, hindi mo na mababalikan yon. And I have actually advised one parent, and hindi naman kailangan mother all the time. May mga fathers who agree, I'm the more effective parent, I will stay home with my child. Kasi mahirap din maghanap ng yaya ngayon. Yung caregiver talagang parang everybody doesn't have a good yaya. And I was seeing before the pandemic, I was very sad kasi nakikita ko, maybe one of the problems is that parents are so busy, the traffic is so bad, the child is left with a yaya who just puts them in front of the TV, and the parents leave early, come home late, walang interaction sa bata. So nung nag-pandemic, actually sabi ko, uy, this a break. Buti nga parents now are there at home, they spend time with their kids. And that's why we were seeing during the lockdown, marami kaming online consults, very young. The parents were observing their children and they were picking up na, uy, bakit delayed yung language, may ganitong problema. Kasi nandun sila sa bahay, nakikita nila yung anak. But the pandemic lockdown was too long. Talagang parang na-affect na talaga yung development ng mga bata. At saka napuno na rin yung mga parents. It's just too much for everybody to be staying together at home. So parang maganda sana yung learnings from the pandemic lockdown, that you can learn from home, but you can't be home all the time. So kailangan you have time to go out, and sana nga when you go out, it's more of interaction rather than academics. Kasi yung academics, you can learn it online. Pero you cannot socialize online. You have to socialize face-to-face. So dapat, when they go to school, they have play activities, they have interaction, they have projects where they can work together na hindi lang solo-solong aral.
Okay. Ma'am, ito, I'll post this to you coming in from Ma'am Vicenta Halwage. I think she's asking for like red flags, or at least in her question, what are the examples of early childhood behaviors that parents need to see a developmental specialist?
Well, ganito, yung dapat framework is that spectrum ang development. So there are those who have some mild symptoms, there are some maybe more apparent and severe. Okay? So ako, somebody to be on top of it, to kind of analyze the child's profile, so that, kasi sabi ko, if you understand your child, then you can be a more effective parent in supporting this. And sa totoo lang, going to a devpedia, it's not, don't expect that the diagnosis is the most important, kasi we sometimes really cannot make a diagnosis when they're very young. Nag-evolve yan, di ba, syndrome? Nag-evolve.
Kasi most people, most people have that sort of expectation. Hindi ko alam nangyayari sa anak ko, punta ako sa devped, baka siya makasagot, tapos we'll take it from there. Usually ganun po yung Tapos tapos they at least for those that in my circle, parang yun na daw kasi yung sinabi sa kanila noong umpisa. So parang yun yung nag-stick sa kanila na talagang in terms of really diagnosing the child.
Totoo lang, nag-evolve ang condition ng bata. So sabi ko, it's not embedded in stone. Napaka-dynamic ng development. It's affected by environment, by family, what's happening in school. So yun dapat yung critical thinking. So parang with parenting support, can milder cases will be overcome in a few months or years, but the more difficult cases or the milder ones later na madadiagnose. or the more severe, mas maaga mo makikita, mas kailangan ng support. So sometimes, environmental yung cause, lack of stimulation, lack of interaction, too much TV time, and that can easily be solved. And it's not naman like the DevPedia has to make this diagnosis, pero kasi kami trained with tools to analyze yung profile of strengths and weaknesses ng bata. And not the diagnosis, but this profile of strengths and weaknesses helps the parent understand how they will help their child more. And then eventually lalabas at lalabas din yung diagnosis as the child grows older kasi makita mo, this didn't work. Or we try something else. This didn't work. O kailangan niya ng more help as they grow older. So, and things emerge. There are some things na akala mo okay lang nung bata. Paglaki parang, oh my gosh, it was something else. It meant something pala.
Dr. Susie, do you have any questions?
There's a question here, Raymond. Look in the chat box. It's about anxiety. I think it's a nice one.
Okay. This one from Mary Joy Denyola. Question is, how do we help kids manage anxiety attacks that may be crippling at times? I think this is more for yung mga adolescents po who have expressed na they feel some anxiety. Ako naman po, personally, I have a question, Ma'am Stella. I don't know, based on your experience, what is the earliest age, the youngest age siguro that you've managed or you've seen na patients exhibiting parang anxiety symptoms? Is that really parang sub-teenager pa lang siya, or as early as maybe in elementary anxiety symptoms crop up already?
No, as early as early childhood. So makikita mo some difficult children, overly sensitive, dysregulated. Some the behavioral problems when they're young will sometimes tell us, oh, this child is highly anxious. So you have to tell the parent how to support that too, so that parang yung this could become a child who has anxiety, could be a bipolar child, but you don't make the diagnosis kasi bata pa yun eh. So kailangan dyan, ang intervention is support. How do you make a child less anxious when you're seeing napaka-anxious ng batang to? Parang konting sila na-dysregulate. So may mga parenting strategies that can help support overly anxious kids or overly sensitive kids or extremely shy children. So yun yung it's not overnight. It's really supporting them from the start, even if you don't know what it is. You know there's something. Why is my kid like this?
Okay. Follow-up question, Dr. Susie.
Well,
also emphasize one thing.
Sige, go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead.
Sometimes it's not good to be attached to a label. Kuminsan yung mga ibang parents.
Not to be attached to a label.
Oo,
Okay, ma'am. Yes po.
magkukonsulta kasi gusto nila ma-label. Ano ba sakit, di ba?
Yeah. Opo.
I think the important thing is may problem, identify the problem, paano isosolve. So, kuminsan, di ba, kasi na we have a delayed diagnosis o ganito, autism, or nasa spectrum, or parang nasa spectrum. And then I always tell parents, don't be too attached on ay na-diagnose and then klase ng nagiging the parents get depressed because there's a diagnosis. So sabi ko, no, we were able to identify a problem that's ongoing and now we know how we can.
Yeah, sabi ko nga, in the end, sabi ko, it's how we raise our children. It's not the diagnosis. It's how we raise them, how we help them. Kasi yung iba, na nasa even the autism spectrum, kung maganda yung support system, paglaki, nobody will even realize they have autism. They're able to cope. They have developed well. Optimum outcome. So later on, who cares if they're in the spectrum? So sometimes adults, they care because they want to understand themselves. So sila nagsasabi, I think I'm in the spectrum. Okay, then I look into their childhood. Yun lang naman, they need maybe as adults, yung patients need to have a label for themselves. But that's outcome na eh.
Opo. Ma'am, I'm
gonna, Raymond,
Go ahead,
I'm gonna
Dr.
pick
Susie.
up on what Marisa said kasi So we're talking about the kids, right? But how about the reactions of parents? Because there are, of course, parents who will be like, okay, what do I need to do for my child? And there are also parents who freak out and who become a mess themselves because of the kids. Yung parang, oh, what did I do wrong? Or napalaki naman kaming ganyan, pinagagalitan, pinapalo, hindi naman kami naging ganyan. What, how do we deal with those things, no? Typically nga, ang nakikita ko dyan, dalawang parents yung isa yung nakakaintindi, yung isa yung parang mag-withdraw. Kasi parang, hindi ko kaya yan. Nung bata kami, gusto mong umiyak ka na lang dyan, that kind of thing. So, how do we, I don't know, what's our advice on parents?
Well, that's a very good question kasi like you have different kids, you have different parents. Iba-iba din yung mga magulang. So part also of the challenge of our field is also analyzing parents, seeing what works, the art of how do you get them to be your partners. Kasi nga, it's not all us, even if you know what it is, but if you're hindi ka effective in engaging the parent, wala ka rin magagawa for the child. And sometimes,
sila pa yung problema, di ba? Minsan sila pa yung problema eh.
So, and then ang problem din yan, may talagang kung may mental health issues yung parent, they have to address that. Kasi hindi rin sila maging effective kung may problema sila. So actually, sometimes in my clinic, I'm diagnosing the child and then the parent realizes, Doctor, I think I'm that. Are you talking about me? So I go, yeah, genetic ito. So parang yes, buti may insight na na-realize niya na siya din pala nasa spectrum of this or that.
Oo. Very it's a very challenging. I mean, it's a very challenging situation, but I think, it's very timely we're talking about it because it's just so rampant. Everyone I'm talking to, our friends and colleagues, they're all saying that they're booked. They don't know what to do. Ang daming kids na nagkakaproblema. So I think it's really timely that we're talking about this. Raymond, we can do one more question.
Okay, Dr. Susie. So for the next question, we're looking at, meron daw po siyang, what do you call this? Meron daw po siyang apo sa Japan. 1-year-old and 6 months. Now attending nursery school. Both are working parents. Do you think po bringing the children to school ng ganyang kaaga, less than 2 years old, is something that could potentially be workout sa Pilipinas daw kasi ganun daw yata ang kanilang practice in Japan. So far daw po, yung apo daw po niya is having a good time. So I think Miss Benilda De Guia is asking if that is something that will be helpful in a Philippine setting, ma'am.
Well, it depends on the school. Kasi ang school, iba-iba ang school, akala academic. Yung doon school daycare, play yun.
Yeah. Agree, Stel. I agree. I lived in Japan, Raymond, for 3 years. No, ang preschool nila ron is how to fix your bed, how to fix your slippers, how to wash your plate, how to put away your toys.
Behavioral.
Puro ganun lang. Sabi nga nila, what they teach is how to be Japanese. Yung parang paano maayos na maayos yung ganyan. So it is not a school where you kind of have to read and write and ganon. It's more of play and taking care of your stuff, and being and socializing. So I think kung sinasabi niya masaya daw yung bata, it's that kind of although problema sa kanila, okay yun in the first 5 years. Pagdating ng 6 years old, wala na. They really turn them into very competitive kids na walang ginawa kundi magmemorya, no? So, I don't know. We really have to find a good way to to
Actually,
manage this.
I have a follow-up, and this is ano po previously natanong na po to sa akin, tinatanong lang kasi it's from by my friend who is watching via Viber. Pero ididikit ko po siya sa comment here in the chat. Yung anak daw po niya was diagnosed with GDD with red flag signs of ASD, but her therapist said it will not be permanent because as time goes by, children learn to how to cope. Ang question naman po ng kaibigan ko is that you mentioned, Ma'am Stella, kanina, it's a spectrum, or at least their parents would prefer that they identify the child nasan siya sa spectrum para they could maybe better handle it. Ang question naman niya, does the child get out of the spectrum eventually, or parang can you outgrow the spectrum, or forever na siya nasa spectrum, parang ganun daw po?
Well, may mga different ways of thinking. Like, dati ang Asperger's nasa spectrum. Okay? Asperger is so high functioning that they're very normal. We have professors, we have doctors who have Asperger's, no? So dati DSM-4 considered nasa spectrum, tinanggal na. Sa DSM-5, wala ka ng problema, functional ka na. Okay? But basically, you have the core elements of the autism spectrum. So you can move along the spectrum from parang having no skills to being coping, being advanced, but you always have that core deficit, yung hirap ka sa social interaction, how to read social cues. So it's a struggle. So I see some of my adult patients, they're in good jobs, they're professors, they still struggle with reading human. So talaga it's an effort for them to interact. But at least there is that struggle and realization on their part that they want to learn these things. Okay, so ganun. They just don't manifest it. Kumbaga yung phenotype hindi fully expressed. Nakakope na sila. But they're still there in the spectrum.
They're still there in the spectrum. Okay. Sana nakikinig ang aking kaibigan.
Wala na tayong time, Raymond. Nako, Stella, this was great. And Marisa, we're so happy that you spent time with us. I'm sure you'll see our audience really appreciated everything. You'll see mga pasalamat nila. And I hope for those of you who really have an interest in this, watch the playback. Kasi marami kayong mapupulot dun sa lecture ni Stella in particular, no? Yung parang, what are the practical things you can do? So Raymond, let's go to the fun quiz.
Fun quiz, thank you so much. So for these two questions, I will ask si Ma'am Marisa to provide the correct answer. I'll read the question and then she'll provide the correct answer po, and then we'll go ahead with our next segment. So for these two questions, first question, Ma'am Marisa, what are the skills daw po needed for positive parenting, Ma'am?
The correct answer is all of the above. So A, consistent with limit setting, being open with good listening skills, implementing positive reinforcement, avoidance of corporal punishment. All of
Ayan. That. Okay. So dito po sa ating slide, 100% po ang nakakuha. Dito naman po 94% of those who participated in the Zoom got it correctly. For our second question, what are the most common situations that require positive parenting, Ma'am?
It's nice to see na merong deviate from letter E, no? Although letter E is the correct answer, because this emphasizes that all of these days, daily activities of daily living, pwede yan. You can exercise positive parenting. You should not only be there when a child has high grades in school, even for poor grades, you can exercise positive parenting. When a child is misbehaving, so dapat lahat po, whether it's behaving or not, doing well in school or not, with us in the spectrum or not,
laging kailangan ng positive parenting.
Araw-araw, every day, oras-oras kung minsan, di ba? You need the skills to have a good positive parenting.
Okay. Ma'am, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the correct answers. Our next naman po will be our evaluation poll. So for this evaluation poll, we are requesting po all of our attendees, if you are in the Zoom, to participate in this panel discussion poll that you should see in front of you po. These are 5 questions for point Likert scales. Wala Likert scale, wala po kaming hiwalay na isi-send out. Ito na po iyon. What we are asking po is that you answer this. This will be open until the end of the webinar, and then while they are answering this, we will be asking Dr. Stella Guerrero Manalo and Dr. Marisa Lucban to formulate your last messages, maybe your final message to our audience as I go through the list of questions. Number 1, the panelists demonstrated thorough knowledge of the topic. Number 2, the panelists were well prepared and organized. Number 3, the panelists spoke clearly and audibly. Number 4, the panelists use appropriate language with technical medical jargons adequately explained. And finally, the panelists contributed to new perspectives and knowledge on managing various key health issues. We will not be closing this, as I mentioned, until the end of the webinar, as we move on to the final messages from our speakers. Dr. Susie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Raymond. Let's start with Marisa. Marisa, ikaw muna.
Okay. As the chair of the Department of Pediatrics, it's our role in the General Hospital to produce very good pediatricians. And I hope that the training that we're giving to our pediatrician residents will be very helpful as they become pediatricians and partners of parents in leading very good children.
Thank you very much. That's Dr. Marisa Lucban, Chair of the Department of Pediatrics of PGH. Stel, ikaw naman.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier that the most important thing is how we raise our children. And part of being an effective parent is understanding your child. And that's the importance also of a diagnosis. So the diagnosis kind of gives you a roadmap. What am I dealing with? But also that this diagnosis will evolve. Hindi siya stuck in stone. So parang huwag kayong matakot magpatingin for an assessment because it will not define your child, but it will help you to be more effective in supporting your child through their journey through life and developing and achieving their full potential.
Thank you very much. That's Dr. Stella Manalo, who's the head of developmental pediatrics at PGH. Thank you both for your time, for all the effort, and for sharing your knowledge with us. We're gonna have some closing remarks with Stella Maria Jose, who's the head of our education and training program. Go ahead, Stella. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This has been a very interesting webinar, as usual, that PBUP was able to put together. And we discussed parenting, which is a critical part, the critical part of early intervention. According to Dr. Stella Guerrero, parenting is constantly evolving, and also our environment is changing, and we have the proliferation of gadgets and online games, and we have information overload, and also we have fake news. And child behavior is impacted by the pandemic. So how can we help our mothers and their children? She mentioned that family intervention is the first step. So as the mother or father, the parents, you are the early teachers of our children, and early identification and intervention is best. So she also mentioned that there are other interventions such as the center-based intervention, behavioral, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and educational support. But she emphasized the value of the parents. And human development is a process, according to her. The critical period is the early years of the child. So that is from 1 year old to 3 years old. And from kindergarten to grade 3, we have the social behavior. So the child learns to deal with other children. And so that is the social part of their growing up. And from grade 4 to 6, they have comprehension. Of course, they're already studying, and critical thinking. And these are all important steps in their development. And as an adolescent, they have the mental health, which we hope that they develop emotional quotient factor. Now, she also emphasized that movement enhances brain organization and development. So parents, huwag niyong awatin sa paglalaro ang inyong mga anak kasi that is a part of their growing up and their maturation. And I really like what she said at the end, that sa kadulo-dulo nito, love is the answer. You know, our love for our children will motivate us to help them to grow up and achieve their full potential. I also like the lecture of Dr. Marisa Lukban. She said that parenting is a lifelong work. That's true, no? It doesn't stop as children or teenagers. Even if they're already grown up, you are still their parents, and that is part of our work as parents. And she emphasized the importance of teaching our children to read. Sabi nga na it's really important that we instill in our children that part that we want them to learn how to read, so that in the later on in their life, it will be an asset to them. And teaching language to a child is really very important. So what they hear from us is what will also come out of their mouth. So talagang the parents are really the role model of the children. So parents, let's be conscious of our language, no? And we only teach them the positive things, and later on we will all harvest the good works that we have done. That's all. Thank you.
Ay, thank you very much, Stella. Ang ganda-ganda na naman ng closing remarks ni Stella. Pagkaka naman natin yun. Thanks, Stella. That was an excellent summary. And thank you for being with us today, everyone. Next week, we will have a very interesting topic tungkol sa inyong mga mata. So we are going to talk about ophthalmology, and we'll let you know when we make the announcement what exactly the topic is. Pero toka yung Department of Ophthalmology for next week. So over to you, Raymond.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really insightful and lovely closing remarks and synthesis from Dr. Stella Marie Jose. But more importantly po, thank you for an information-rich webinar from the PGH Department of Pediatrics. Maraming salamat po to the chair, Dr. Marisa Locban, and also to the head of Developmental Behavioral Pediatrics, Dr. Stella Guerrero Manalo po. So for next week, bago po natin, sabi na po ni Dr. Susie, we might have, I don't want to preempt it, but we might have a very special guest po that hopefully will be able to join us na lang for our next webinar. But before we conclude our program, all Stop COVID Deaths webinars are archived for viewing at the TV YouTube channel. You just go to www.youtube.com/TVUPPH for you to be able to see all 144 webinars. And after today, it will be 145 webinars to date. And kakibat po noon, meron po tayong what we lovingly call SCD shorts. Ito po yung very, very short selected presentations, very consumable that we feature in the YouTube channel din po ng TVUP. Whether you are waiting somewhere, waiting for your kape sa barista, or commuting, etc., on the train, on the bus, it might be helpful for you and gain some nuggets of wisdom from these SCD shorts po natin. So this formally closes our webinar for the week. Magkita-kita po ulit tayo next Friday from 12 noon to 2 p.m. It's a date.
Together, we can stop COVID deaths.
So keep safe, keep healthy, and see you online.